are in a liminal space of seasons in Wisconsin right now, shifting between what I like to think of as mud season and bloom season. Now, I know you know mud season. That's where that dead grass gets stirred up by a wintry mix into a freezing mud of despair. And then there's bloom season, where the flowers actually start to open in a heartwarming sunshine that tells us, yes, there is reason to live. We're in between those right now. We're in that place where the press of green is moving through the mud. And we have to focus our eyes on purpose, on the buds and any and all sparks of green that have begun, and be sure to bask in the sun for the 20 minutes that it shows up in the middle of the day on a Tuesday. We're lucky, though, here in Wisconsin to get to experience all 4 seasons, to witness the ways that our lives move along with the cycles of the earth. The hibernation and the death of winter always blooms to life again every spring and helps us remember that death and life move together in a rhythm with one another. Our lives, they are also cycles that move in this rhythm. The death part of it is very real, and it's devastating, but it is of a piece with the life part. It is as fundamentally interconnected with life as we are with each other and with other species and the earth that holds us all. When the Roman Empire decided to co-opt Christianity as part of its method of conquering people, and later empires followed in similar suit, it made sense to pair the Christian holiday of the resurrection of Jesus Christ with pagan festivals of spring. Even the name of this holiday that celebrates resurrection, Easter, it likely comes from the name of the fertility goddess of spring, Ostra. In bud season, liminal between mud and bloom, human beings are making sense of the collaborative relationship between life and death. The relationships where some die that others might live, where sacrifice and release is connected to miracles and to new life becoming, rising again and again and again. Though the cycle changes in forms and in moments and in context, we understand the story of death turning into life again. We understand the story of life rising again and again and again, and we understand it particularly well in this season. Now, dear ones, you will not be surprised that I have a liberation theology lens for the role that empire plays in the Christian story, but we'll leave that for another year. And on this year, when Easter and Earth Day land in the same week, we'll just focus on the larger Gaia relationship between life and death, and rising again and again and again. Reverend Kevin Tarsa told this Radiolab story on another Easter morning. In Butte, Montana, there is a red lake that one of the scientists on the Radiolab show said shimmers in a way that words can't describe. It shimmers red and green and gray and black. The lake is actually an old copper mine that's cut into the side of a hill, and about 100 years ago, a third of the United States copper came from this mine in Butte, Montana. But as the price of copper dropped, the mine produced less and less, and Butte slowly shifted from boomtown to bust. Finally, on Earth Day in 1982, the mining company turned off the pipes that had been pumping the groundwater out of that mine, and water, of course, started to fill in the pit, turning the old mine into a toxic lake. Chemical reactions led to a lake that was filled with sulfuric acid and copper and cadmium and zinc and iron sulfate and even arsenic. It is a toxic red lake that also shimmers green and gray and black. Now, the people of Butte stayed away from the mine, but in the 1990s, a huge flock of snow geese was passing through during an enormous storm, and they were looking for shelter. They landed on the lake that night of the storm, and they spent the night there. In the morning, the townspeople found all 342 snow geese dead on the lake. Now, a couple of decades later, scientists were studying that same shimmery red, green, gray, black toxic lake in Butte, and they unexpectedly found some green slime floating in the lake. Green slime living. Against all odds, something was living in this toxic lake. I mean, it was green slime, but it was alive. So the scientists studied the green slime, and they found all kinds of living organisms in the slime, including organisms that fight viruses and even organisms that fight cancer. About a year later, the scientists were still studying the lake and these weird, quirky, unique, special organisms that were living in it, and they found a new organism, a thick, black, sticky goo organism. So they started studying that. They did all kinds of tests on it, and they discovered that if they took some of this black, sticky goo and they put it into a little bit of water from the lake, the black goo started absorbing the toxic metals from the water, sucking them out like a sponge for metal. Now, other scientists in other places have found other organisms that take metals out of polluted water, but those organisms, they take like 10% or 15% of the metals out of the polluted water. This new sticky black goo, it was taking 85 to 95% of the metal out of the water. It was cleaning the water. So the scientists, they kept studying this miraculous water-cleaning black goo that was living in the lake, trying to figure out what it was and where it came from. And after studying it for a long time, taking shelter from a storm in the 1990s, and died, their bodies left behind an organism that would stay there for decades and not only clean up the toxic water that killed them, clean up toxic metals at the highest rate that scientists have seen, but new organisms would then start living in this very specific, unique place. Organisms that have power to fight viruses and even cancer. Life finds a way. Even in the worst, most creepy, toxic-filled, acid arsenic lake that kills everything, life finds a way to rise again. Even in the belly of the beast, even in the Roman Empire. Even in fighting fascism in the United States today, life finds a way. And in its insistent rebirth, life is quite creative. It transforms toxicity in surprising, even miraculous ways, from goose butts to green slime to fighting cancer, from crucifixion to resurrection to liberation theology, from capitalism to fighting fascism to building the beloved community. Death and loss are part of this story. They are part of the cycle of life. They are part of the Easter story and the Ostra story and the Butte, Montana story and our story. And there is grief from that. But the grief is not the end of the story. We honor it. We work through it in ritual. We name its losses and we honor the lives that are gone. And we also celebrate new life. We welcome in the new babies. We plant the seeds. We celebrate new love. We gather in community and witness the black goo into green slime, into new life of one another. We participate with one another in this new life, and we keep creating it again and again through our weaving and building and transformation. We can be part of transforming toxicity into life-saving goodness. We can plant flowers, we can water the earth, we can make community, we can fight fascism, we can create art. Today, after the service in the common room, our Earth Justice Ministry is honoring Earth Day with a tree full of climate actions that you can take between now and Flower Communion. You just pick your action and be part of life rising again, transforming the toxic into the miraculous. Our world moves in seasons. Grief and winter always giving way to spring and joy and back again. Death is part of the cycle of life, making way for new life and also nourishing it. This gorgeous earth that we are part of is a teacher for us about life and death and resurrection, and bearing witness to her beauty can help us journey through the grief and fear of our finitude. The world comes back, and we come back to her in all the birds flying, flowers budding, sun shining, fish swimming beauty. May we feel her heart beating in our own, plant our seeds of hope in the ground and in the future, and celebrate life's tenacious insistence at rising again and again. For dear ones, we are part of it. We are part of this cycle, entangled and becoming together, because we are alive. May we rejoice in the miraculous